Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Bree. Hi if you're new here, or hey if you've been here before. Today I am doing my April reading wrap up, and is it just me or was April like the longest month in the history of forever? I swear this week alone, the last week of April, has been the longest week of my life. And when I was kind of compiling all the books that I read for this month, which was 6 and I think I did pretty good, I don't even know like how I read some of the books that I read in this month because it seemed like so long ago already, but I'm here today to talk about them. I have 6 books, and I'm going to mention one that I am in the process of deciding if I'm DNFing or not, so I'll start with that one. But I'm going to try to make this as quick as possible because I have a session to get to, and you know, this is how my life goes. I just try to film when I have time, so here we go. Let's start. All right, so first and foremost, I have to mention that the reason I ended up kind of falling into a small slump in the month is because of this book. Now, obviously, I did kind of have a TBR for April, and one of the reasons I was doing this TBR is to try to get through books that I've met the authors, they've signed my copies, and I just never read them. This was an independent author, and basically the book is following this like 17 or 18-year-old boy who kind of just lives this like downtrodden life. His stepfather was abusive and I think killed his mother. He never knew his father because his father died before he was born. He lives with his grandmother, and pretty much everyone in the world hates him, literally. He has these unique and weird powers. He has a voice inside of his head, and he doesn't really know why, but then you kind of find out that there's a world of vampires and other magical creatures, and he is kind of a part of that. I made it to about halfway through so far. I'm not quite DNFing this yet, just because it's so convoluted. I think the author was trying to be way too mysterious when he was writing this book, because the beginning was hella confusing. I had no idea what was going on, why things were happening, and it just seemed like shock value. The other part that I had to struggle with was that there were things happening in this book, but there was like no, I don't know, there was no lead up. Like, I didn't really care about the characters, and I didn't really understand what was going on. So like when these big explosive things would happen in the book, I was just kind of like, okay, that's cool. Let's see what's happening next. The one thing I will say is it's unfortunate because I think this writer is good. The author is talented. I think if he got this book in the right hands with the right beta readers, the right editors, and maybe even pursued like traditional publishing, maybe this would have been like really right up my alley. But it was just kind of messy, and that's the unfortunate bit. I also think his vampire lore was super interesting, and I wish we got more of that, except for like a brief paragraph, you know, throwaway passage about it, but it was super interesting. So I was kind of put in a slump because I was so forcing myself to read this that for like 2 straight weeks I just didn't do anything. With that said though, I did read some great books, and let me dive into those. The first book I finished this month was We Set the Dark on Fire by Taylor K. Mejia. So this book follows a 2 girls. It's in the one perspective, and they are kind of in this, it's not magical, but it's a fantasy world where the privileged and wealthy rule, and they really make it hard for the lower class to survive and live. The main character is a girl who is in this lower class. They actually snuck in, so there's a wall, and the people on like outside the wall are complete outcasts. Like they are treated awfully, and they're not privileged to anything essentially. And then you get inside the wall, and they're like almost trash. And then as you like work your way away from the wall and get into the middle of the city, you have the most wealthy people. So our main character, actually, her parents had snuck her underneath the wall or whatever, through the wall, and gave her the best life they can. So basically there are these 2 types of women, and they kind of get auctioned off for wealthy men in society. And our main character is a Primera, and that means that she kind of is like the left-hand side to her husband. She does planning, she's cunning, she doesn't show emotions, she's very logical. And the other girl who is picked, I'm really blanking on what they're called right now, and I just can't, I don't know why I can't remember it. Segunda. There we go. Thank God I turned to the right page. So the Segundas are like the lovely ones. They're the child bearers. They're like the nurturers who keep the man happy and comfortable, essentially. And they kind of balance each other out. So our main character is a Primera, and that's her job. She's always been trained for this. But then it essentially kind of goes awry because there's a lot of unrest in the city, and there's unrest on the other side of the wall, and because of all of this, our main character and the Segunda in this novel kind of get wrapped up in this like crazy scheme, and you start to find out things, and as this is all going on, you're realizing that there is kind of a love connection between the two girls instead of with the prince or man, I guess. There's no princes, it's actually like a government rule. So like this just like wealthy man. So I gave this a 3 stars. I think there was a lot of promise in it. I liked some things, and then other things there were like tropes or just things that happened that I hate in books typically. So it was very convoluted to kind of rate this because I met the author in person and I loved her in person. I think she is a talented writer, and I definitely liked where she was going with the story. It just wasn't on the level that I wanted it to be. I thought the romance was very rushed. And unfortunately, I don't know if things got cut out before this was published, but I definitely thought there were like instances where they could have built the relationship up a little bit better before it actually happened. And it wouldn't have taken much, like a few sentences here and there. But because of, the length of the book and being a debut, things might have gotten cut. And unfortunately, some of that fell flat with the romance for me. But I did like the characters. I like the writing style. I like that it's LGBT plus as well as has Hispanic roots in it. And overall, I would definitely recommend this. I mean, 3 stars isn't bad. There was enough that I really liked, and I will probably read the sequel. I just don't know when. The next book that I finished in the month of April is Heroine by Mindy McGinnis. This book follows a softball player named Mickey who is a senior, and she is trying to get a softball scholarship. Her best friend, she's a catcher, her best friend's a pitcher, and she's kind of very awkward and introverted in school, but when she plays softball, her personality comes out and she's part of the team. She is one of the best players, and their school team is one of the best in the state and kind of were the underdogs, where they like rose up from the ashes and proved that they had a really, really great team. Her and her best friend end up getting into a car accident where she ends up shattering her hip, and she needs months and months of rehab, and they end up prescribing her painkillers to help with her recovery, and Mickey gets addicted. This, as you might be able to tell, ends up leading her down a dark path towards a heroin addiction and just how that impacts her life. So I will say trigger warning for addiction, and it's pretty relevant in this book. Like there's a lot of like the verbiage, so I would definitely say if you're a recovering addict, you might not want this one because it's very, very on point with how things are done, and there's talk of how they're using the drugs in detail. So I would definitely just stay away from this. But if you're anyone else, and I think this is really just really well done. It's a slow book, and it's not meant to be this like thrill ride. It's not meant to prove a point. It's just kind of painting the picture of how addiction takes over, and there's a good chance you're not going to like the main character because of her actions, but I think it's that reason that it makes the drug addiction so real. I work with teenagers sometimes who have drug addictions. I have in the past I've worked with parents who've had addictions, and I've seen this in my personal life. So I definitely understand how this is so real and scary, and how you start to justify the reasons for your use, and your family, even though they might know something's wrong, they're trying to justify it for you, and everyone's just trying to turn a blind eye because they don't want to accept the fact that this is reality. It was incredibly hard-hitting. And for me, there was another like weird nostalgia point of this book that hit me in a different way, where I was a softball player. It was one of my best and funnest passions that I've ever had, and unfortunately I didn't take advantage of that. There was multiple reasons and layers for why I didn't take advantage of it, that I won't get into in this video to keep it brief, but basically this just brought back that sense of like team spirit and that companionship and just that drive to be the best you can be, which was something I experienced so much playing softball. So there was at some moments that she was just describing her team, and I just thought that was so real and vivid for me, and it really just made me long to play softball again. So like I said, it wasn't the drug, I mean, the drug use definitely impacted me. I sobbed. Full disclosure, at one point in this book, I just sobbed because it hit me so much about how, like, everything wasn't going to be okay, essentially. But it was weird that in the same sense, like, I was sobbing about that, but then also getting hit with this, like, I'm never going to have that softball feeling again. It was just the weirdest journey for this book, but all in all, I gave it 5 stars. I just think it was magnificent. Mindy McGuinness is one of my favorite authors. And so far, I don't think I've given any of her books. Well, maybe. Her fantasy book I was on the verge of. I don't remember. I think I have to reread that one. So the 3 books that I've read that aren't fantasy from her, I've given 5 stars so far. I think she's an incredible author. I think she knows how to invoke emotion. And I can understand why this might not be someone's cup of tea. But if you're looking at it from, you know, watching someone decrease into an addiction, this is just so on point. So there we go. So the next book I finished in the month of April was Blood Heir by Amelie Wen Zhao. So this book I was on my reading list for quite a while. I kept coming back to it, putting it down, coming back to it, putting it down. And I think part of the reason I wasn't connecting is because I think I was reading so many books with a very similar plot in the dynamic. So this book follows, it is kind of a loose retelling of Anastasia with magic, and our main character is a princess who was scared off into the night, and everyone thought that she drowned in a river. In truth, she did not drown. She ended up running away because she has a very rare ability of blood magic, and she can kind of control people based on the blood flowing in their veins. And that's very dangerous in this society, and it's very unheard of. So a lot of people are misunderstanding of it and are afraid of it. Someone catches her over her father's dead body, and they automatically think she used her powers to kill him, so she flees. And then it's kind of her trying to build back up the courage to re-enter her home because her brother is still there and she misses him, and she wants not only for him to know she's okay, but to help him rule, because there's a lot of unrest, and she's starting to see this as she's like traveling throughout the country and coming back to her city. There's a lot of unrest and there's a lot of illegal magic dealings, and she wants to be able to right this. So the reason I ended up giving this 3 stars as well, and the reason I give this 3 stars is, again, I think it was just because it was a very similar story to a lot of YAs that I read. You have like the misunderstood character who is like kind of like a chosen one in some regards. She has to reclaim her kingdom. She has a love interest who's super snarky and calls her pet names that she hates, but they eventually kind of fall in love. It was a lot of cliches. I don't think the book was bad by any means. Again, 3 stars, middle of the road. I just kind of was a little bit jaded by the topic. But I liked the characters. I liked the world. I especially liked it as it got later in the book and there was a little bit more of the dealings in the city. The bad guys in this book, like there's kind of like 2 bad guys, and the one bad guy, it was kind of a little, I don't know. I don't know if it came out of nowhere for me, but it just kind of didn't sell it, I guess. But I would consider reading the second one. At this point, after struggling to read this, because I started this book back in November, I don't know if I would immediately pick up the second book to this, and I think it's only a duology. But if I'm able to get it in audiobook, I might, because this is how I ended up finishing the book, and the audiobook was really well done. So I would definitely recommend, if you're curious about this book and you would like to read it, the audio is a very well way to go. So the next 2 books I'm going to talk about are part of a series, so that's why I'm going to mention them together, and that would be Roar and Rage by Cora Carmack. So I mentioned this, I think, I mentioned it somewhere in my Feel Goods read, I think. So I kind of already gave a description, but my lowdown is that we have a princess in a fantasy world who is supposed to be a Stormheart, which is a descendant who has the power to control and fight storms. And our main character, Aurora, does not actually have this magic. Aurora basically thinks that she is never going to amount to anything because she can't actually protect her kingdom from the storms like her mother can. So they kind of arrange a plot to marry the second son of a neighboring kingdom in order to kind of create that alliance and use his storm magic to help protect their city. But when she starts to find out that the prince isn't quite what she thought he was going to be and that they probably wouldn't be happy together, she kind of thinks he's scheming for a greater purpose. She ends up finding a group of storm chasers and decides to press her luck with that, thinking, you know, if they can grab storms and chase storms and use the hearts of these storms for their own magic, then I can do that too and I could protect my city. So that kind of runs from there where she, like, you know, runs off with these strangers, and there is quite a really good love story in this, in my opinion. Unlike most of the books that I read in the young adult category, I definitely liked this, and I thought it was well paced, all things considered. So this is the second time I've read this book. I decided to read it through an audiobook. Well, I guess listen to it on audio because I already read it once, and I love the audio, and I still gave this book 5 stars. I love this world. I love the magic system. I love the romance, and it had cliches that I don't normally like, and I still loved it. So there, cliches. Sometimes you win. But honestly, I think this book was just so well done. Overall, I've never read Cora Cormack's books prior to this because she writes primarily new adult romance, and I don't read new adult romance, at least not to my knowledge. But this, I think, would fall in a new adult category. Aurora is about 18 and the love interest is 21. So I think Cora knows that it falls within that range, but technically fantasy doesn't have a new adult category, so it's young adult. Anyway, I'm ranting, but I just really love everything about this. I think it's really fun. It's very endearing. And even though there are definitely some darker plot lines weaving in, you know, the unrest in the towns and how magic is being abused. Again, I mean, I think this is a common theme in young adult books, but, and also, you know, Aurora's journey to being comfortable with herself and actually finding her truth in the magic. Whereas, you know, some of the other books, like, they already are aware of their potential. I like that she doesn't know, and that kind of helps her grow. And I also like that it causes this tension between her and the crew of the storm chasers she joined. I think that was really well done. So I ended up continuing with that series with Rage. I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars. I liked it very well. Also, the audiobook for this one, same audiobook narrator. It was really done. It was really well done. But I think there were just some things that I just wish maybe either were expanded on or, like, didn't go quite how I was thinking they were going to go. There were a few plot points where I was kind of like, oh, if they just went this way or they just did this instead, I think I would have liked it even better. However, I think this kind of suffers that second book syndrome where the third book is going to pick back up and be like that powerful ending that I think it can be. So I'm kind of holding out that this book was, you know, setting up for the big bad in book 3. And I'm just really excited. Book 3 was supposed to come out in August. I don't know if it still is, but I'm hoping it is, and I'm going to pre-order it whenever it's available to pre-order. And the last book that I read, and I just finished this at the last day of the month, was an e-arc that I got called the AntiVirginity Pact by Katie Wismer. So if, you know, I'm a very small YouTuber at this point in my career, Katie has a decent following on YouTube, and she's been documenting, you know, she started off as just a booktuber and kind of expanded into author-tuber, and I've been following her for quite a few years now, actually. I didn't realize how long until she, like, made a video about when she started and the things she was posting, and I was like, wow, I've really been here for a long time. All that said, I really like Katie. I think she sounds like a great person, and I've just liked watching her travels. So I decided to request this on NetGalley, and I got approved, and there was... this is another one very similar to Noir. I'm kind of end capping with my, like, possible, because I think with Noir I would end up rating it a 2-star at the point that I'm in the story. Similar with AntiVirginity Pact, I'm rating it a 2-star, and I don't do this with a light heart, but I just felt like for a contemporary novel, Katie made choices, and that's okay. You're an author, and she's independent publishing this, so she doesn't have the restrictions that, like, a traditional publishing would probably impose on the book. However, I think there is too much being tackled in this book. There was, like, an entire list of things that I did in my review, and I will leave that review. Well, my Goodreads is always in my description, so if you want the full review of this book, go check out my Goodreads, because I'm not going to do this and waste all the time that I have. But the basics the whole book premise is that there is a girl named Meredith. She's 18, about to graduate high school and move to college. Her entire life, she has been the preacher's daughter and the quiet kid. Her parents are extremely religious to the point of being zealots, and she doesn't believe. And she's trying to come to terms with all of this while also, you know, pushing herself to get out of this quiet girl norm. So her best friend kind of convinces her to sign an anti-virginity pact that they will both lose their virginity before the end of the school year. And, you know, they kind of do this in a drunken stupor one night. And from there, you would think that it kind of follows like how this pact gets leaked out and the reprimands and kind of coming to terms with like who she is and her identity for religion and kind of coming to terms with that and her parents. And there is that in the book, but then there's also a lot of other topics thrown in, as you know, sexual abuse, parent kind of abuse, like the verbal and emotional damage from parents. There's conversion camps and questions about LGBTQIA. There's dog fights and animal abuse. Lord, and I think there's more. Like I'm just kind of spewing from what I like remember when I did my review the other night. But yeah, there was a lot to unpack in that book. And I think because there was so much in it, it just took away from everything. Like you couldn't give time for one specific topic because you were already moving on to the next. And it's unfortunate because like I said, I think I like Katie, and honestly, she's a good writer, especially for the contemporary genre. The book that she created, the writing is fine. It's good. I was engaged, and I will say I finished the book, which is not something, you know, like I said with noir, I don't know if I will finish it because it's just too much for me. But with Katie's book, I finished it, and that was great. So I definitely think she has room to grow, and I'm honestly super excited. So I don't want my 2-star review to see like I'm being super negative because I'm not in any way. It's more of just I think she has great potential, and I can't wait to see what she would do in the future, but this novel just wasn't it for me. So, you know, it's sad. That's how we ended the month, but I'm looking forward to the month of May. I have a lot of great books. I just got, I actually have been acquiring quite a few books, and I might do a book haul coming up, but for now, I'm just going to leave this with that. I have no specific reading plans for the month of May, but I might do some vlogs here and there, especially on the weekend. So just keep a lookout for all of that. And as always, let me know if you know, what did you read this month? What was your favorite book? What was your least favorite book? Did you read at all? Did you have plans to read a lot and then you didn't? I mean, just kind of, let's start a conversation down in the comments. I just want to know how you guys did. I know it's a weird time we're living in, but there's always time to read, I hope. So until next time, guys, I'll see you then. Bye.